Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana yamunatiravanachari jaya kunja vihari jaya kunja vihari yamunatiravanachari jaya kunja vihari jaya kunja vihari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava, Radha Madhava, Radha Madhava, Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Madhava, Radha Madhava, Radha Madhava, Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Shri Radhe. Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnupad Paramamsa Padvigacharya Stutta Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnupad Paramamsa Padvigacharya Stutta Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Janita Gaur Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 4. Vidura approaches Maitreya, Text 10. Tasyanuraktasya munir Mucukunda Pramoda bhavanta khandarasya Ashrinvato mamanuragahasha Samikshaya vishramayan uvacha Tasyanuraktasya munir Mucukunda Pramoda bhavanata khandarasya Ashrinvato mamanuragahasa Samikshaya vishmaramayan uvacha Tasyanuraktasya munir Mucukunda Pramoda bhavanata khandarasya Ashrinvato mamanuragahasa Samikshaya vishramayan uvacha Tasya, his Maitreya's, anuraktasya, although attached, mune, of the sage, Mucukunda, the Lord who awards salvation, pramodabhava, in a pleasing attitude, ananta, lowered, khandarasya, of the shoulder, ashrinvataḥ, while thus hearing, mam, unto me, anuragaḥ, with kind smiling, samikshaya, particularly seeing me, vishramayan, allowing me complete rest, uvacha, said. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. Maitreya Muni was greatly attached to him, the Lord, and he was listening in a pleasing attitude with his shoulder lowered, with a smile and a particular glance upon me, having allowed me to rest. The Lord spoke as follows. Purport. Although both Uddhava and Maitreya were great souls, the Lord's attention was more on Uddhava because he was a spotlessly pure devotee. A Jnana Bhakta, or one whose devotion is mixed with the monistic viewpoint, is not a pure devotee. Although Maitreya was a devotee, his devotion was mixed. The Lord reciprocates with his devotees on the basis of transcendental love and not on the basis of philosophical knowledge or fruitive activities. In the transcendental loving service of the Lord, there is no place for monistic knowledge or fruitive activities. The gopis in Vrindavan were neither highly learned scholars nor mystic yogis. They had spontaneous love for the Lord, and thus he became their heart and soul, and the gopis also became the heart and soul of the Lord. Lord Chaitanya approved the relationship of the gopis with the Lord as supreme. Herein the Lord's attitude towards Uddhava was more intimate than with Maitreya Muni. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I seek the blessings of all the senior Vaishnavas. I can speak something to glorify the Lord and His devotees by the mercy of the devotees. Sanction of a guru, I can try and say something. So this is a very intimate section of the Bhagavatam because the Lord is leaving, and usually when someone leaves this world, they're surrounded with the most confidential associates, and in this case, when Krishna left the world, it was only Uddhava. How dear Uddhava must be to the Supreme Lord. Actually, it says in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam that neither Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Sankarshan, his brother, even Lakshmi, nor even herself is more dear. Uddhava is more dear in this way. And we're hearing specifically in this purport also that because he was a pure, unalloyed devotee of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada glorifies the position of the gopis in Vrindavan. They were not scholars. Nowhere in the Bhagavad Gita explains that you have to be a big Vedic scholar, you know, or a rich person to go back to Godhead. He just says, Man manava bhakto mat yaji mam namaskuru. Always constantly thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer your obeisances to me. Fully absorbed in me, you will come back to me. That's all that's required. But that means we have to love Krishna because we cannot fully constantly think and absorb ourselves on Krishna if there wasn't any love, any priti or affection. So therefore there's this talk about karma and gyan. As described in the Nectar of Devotion, Rupa Goswami explains that the biggest contamination for bhakti is karma and gyan, the desire for fruitive activities and liberation. Bhukti mukti sprihayava pisachi ridivartate. He says that there's this pisachi, this is witch that sometimes dwells in the heart, and it's the witch of bhukti and mukti, the desire to gratify the senses and for a bit of peace of mind, a bit of liberation from the material pangs of misery. And he says that if one is inflicted by this witch of bhukti and mukti, one cannot experience the supremely transcendental taste of devotional service, the sweet taste of devotional service. So this karma and gyan is such a scourge on the path of always wanting to think of Krishna constantly 24 hours a day, how I can gratify my senses and how I can get a bit of peace of mind. Especially in this day and age, spend most of my time in New Zealand trying to outreach. Over the last 20 years, I've been trying to distribute books and assisting my spiritual master, His Holiness Deva Nimitta-mātraṁ, in his outreach there. And we see that most people in the West, they just want a little bit of peace of mind, not even a bit of happiness, just a bit of peace of mind, because it's so disturbing. The atmosphere is so disturbing that just peace of mind is something that's, no question of happiness, because prerequisite to happiness is just a bit of peace. And you can't have peace if you can't control your mind and senses. In the wild, wild West, there's no value for controlling mind and senses. So most people that come to our preaching facilities, the people that we're cultivating, just want a bit of peace of mind. And they come to bhakti and they have all these attachments of and problems, and it's a really bewildering state of affairs. So in any case, this karma and gyan, it's there, and it stops one from tasting the supremely blissful, transcendental nectar of Krishna consciousness. And because Uddhava was not inflicted by these things, he was a pure, spotless devotee of the Lord. Therefore, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, these were anuragha. When Maitreya Muni came, he just gave him some smiling glance, but actually he wanted to focus his attention on Uddhava, who was a spotless devotee. So also in Brihad Bhagavatam Rita, we don't have to feel bad that, I have some desire for karma again, because Sanatana Goswami explains in Brihad Bhagavatam Rita that for those who, karma and gyan can actually become an impetus for the spiritual aspirant to progress in bhakti once it's sufficiently purified. So when karma is purified from the fruits of one's endeavor, it becomes just pure work for the pleasure of the Lord. When jnana is purified from this conception of oneness, then one's contemplation is just on their pure identity as part and parcel of Krishna. Mamai vamsu jiva loki jiva bhutasnat. I'm just a servant of the Lord. And meditation increases, then one is just thinking about the glories of devotional service once gyan is purified. And Sanatana Goswami even goes to as far as explaining that you can even purify vairagya for those persons who are attached to renunciation. When that's purified, the whole conception of liberation they become indifferent to that. And vairagya in itself becomes an impetus to serve the Lord with great eagerness and enthusiasm. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada explained in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that the process of bhakti of Krishna consciousness is anartha apagavam. Means that, it removes all the unwanted desires, all the contamination in the heart that we've had for millions and millions of lifetimes. Therefore, akama sarva kamova mokshakamo dharidi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Whether one is no material desires, akama, or one is full of material desires, sarva kama, moksha kama, wants a little bit of peace of mind, some liberation. Tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Let me just serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead with full attention and determination. And in due course of time, one can become purified of all these unwanted things. So the position of Uddhava prior to this situation in the Bhagavatam is so remarkable, actually, because it's said that he was actually a little bit proud prior to this situation. I remember Gaur Govinda Maharaj explained that he was even a Jnana Mishra Bhakta. His bhakti was somewhat had a little bit of a attachment to Gyan there. Why was that? Because, Uddhava, he was actually Brihaspati Shishya. He was the disciple of Brihaspati. Brihaspati is the sage of the gods. He's the priest of the demigods in Swarga. And he was a disciple of Brihaspati, and Brihaspati teach him everything he knew. But Brihaspati couldn't teach him one thing. And this is where Krishna, who was very kind to his devotees, and that wonderful scenario when he asked Uddhava to go to Vrindavan. Because there's one thing that Brihaspati can't teach you, and that was the selfless, pure, unalloyed devotional service of the residents of Braj. So prior to this situation, Uddhava was actually a little bit, yeah, I'm Krishna's main man, I'm Mantri Raj, I'm the counselor of the Yadus, But because Krishna is so kind to his devotees, Braja, Janardihan Virayoshitam, Nija Janasmaya Dvamshana Shmita, that for those who are very close to Krishna, he gives them an opportunity to cut down their pride. So this is one of the main reasons that actually Uddhava was sent to Vrindavan, to cut his pride. Actually, the Acharya has explained several reasons, but this was one reason. And so he can learn from these unalloyed devotees of Braj. And it's such a beautiful section. I was reading this the last day, a couple of days, and also the commentaries of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Jiva Goswami. And that when when Uddhava entered Vrindavan, he had this whole idea that he's going to be the main man. He's going to give consolation to Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda Mata, and he's going to give this letter to the gopis that will pacify them. And he did that to some extent. His meeting with Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda was very well received. And what did Uddhava do? Uddhava painted a very beautiful picture of Krishna Tattva, according to what he'd learned from Shastra. And he was consoling Nanda Maharaj in this way. You shouldn't be lamenting so much. Your son is Bhagavan, Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan. And he was giving so many logical reasons of why, Krishna is the super soul in all living entities, in the heart of all living entities. Why are you, lamenting? He is God. But every time Uddhavji was trying to console Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda Mata in this way, his fire of separation just increased, because whatever Uddhava said for Nanda Baba, it was all about Krishna is just my Gopal. Krishna is just my son. Krishna is just my darling boy. He couldn't conceive of what Uddhava was trying to say with his Shastra Gyan. So he was actually getting a little humbled. I can't console these guys. Nanda Baba is thinking, Uddhavji is saying that, Krishna is God. I know Krishna, I know God, one God, Bhagavan, Narayan, and Narayan, he is Mula Karana. He is the source of all Purusha and Prakriti and Sarveshvara. He is the supreme controller. He's the source of all living entities. He holds all this universe by his mystic power. But how can that be? My Krishna is just my simple milk-fed child. Narayan, I know God, Narayan is apapa vidha. He's sinless, pure, uncontaminated. My Krishna, he goes to the neighbor's house and pees and, passes stool and steals their butter. How can he be sinless and pure? My Uddhavaji, he's thinking, Krishna is Satya Sankalpa, he is truthful. The Lord Bhagavan Narayan is truthful. How can Krishna become true? He's lying all the time. Narayan is the reservoir of all living entities, upholds the universe. That's Bhagavan. How can... And Krishna, he's like... I've seen Krishna, my Gopal. He takes my karams, my wooden shoes, and puts it on my head. This Uddhavaji is this nonsense. How can he say these things? And in this way, as much as Uddhava tried to pacify and console Nanda Maharaj's Vatsalya Priti, his affection for the Lord in terms of his parental affection was so condensed like the molecule, the molecular density, the molecule particles of some solid object is so dense, you can't penetrate with any object like this thing here. You can't penetrate it with a knife. It's so dense that whatever Uddhava tried to say to console Nanda and Yashoda, he couldn't penetrate this Vatsalya Priti. It was so strong. This affection for the Lord, for parental love, was just so strong that Uddhava and Nanda Maharaj were talking all night. Of course, then the following morning, what happened? Uddhava went to send a letter to the Braja, the damsels of Braj, and he consoled them in that way, and he saw the unbelievable, extraordinary, pure, loving affection that these gopis had for Krishna, which culminated in Srimad Radharani talking to the bumblebee, as you all know. And Uddhava was just completely dumbstruck. You know, this is such a humiliating experience. I was thinking that I'm, very dear to Krishna. I'm having all this knowledge. I can console these people. But whatever he did, you know what his conclusion was? Asham maho, he says, Asham maho charanarenu. Jusham maham sham. Asham maho charanarenu. Jusham maham sham. Vrindavane kim. This is his conclusion after meeting with the gopis. He says, Charanarenu, let me just be devoted to the dust of the feet of these devotees. What an amazing transformation. From being a little bit proud and then coming in contact with these very advanced devotees, he's thinking, let me just have the charanarenu, the dust. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur actually explains that he wasn't thinking that, oh, when am I going to be a gopi one day? He was thinking, oh, let me just be the dust. Let me just exalt the dust of these devotees. And Jiva Goswami explains something very remarkable in his commentary, Toshni commentary, in this section of the Bhagavatam, where he explains that actually, with his increasing desire to attain the love like that of the Braja Gopis came his increasing humility. And this was expressed in the second line of this verse, which is Vrindavane kim api gulmalat o shadinam. And that his desire to take birth as a particular entity became lower and lower and lower. He says, Gulma lata up o shadinam. So actually, Jiva Goswami explains he could have wanted to become a tree, but no, this is too high. So lata, gulma, let me just become a bush. Still, too high. Lata, let me become a lata, let me just become a creeper in Vrindavan. No, too high. Oshadinam, let me just become a blade of grass. Let me just become a blade of grass. Why is that? Because when the cowherd damsels of Braj and the residents of Braj would run around Vrindavan, he would attain that most sacred paraphernalia, which means really means essentially to serve, to follow in the footsteps, to exalt, because it's like an expression of humility, and humility is expressed through service. So let me serve Mahajana Yatagat. Let me follow in the footsteps of these great souls. Mahajana Yatagatasa Panta. That he wasn't even talking about the feet, but the dust of the feet. So this is Uddhava's humility, his transformation. We hear even in the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam where Prahlad Maharaj explains that for one who was inclined to materialistic life, attachment to the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it's not possible unless what? Mahiyasha parabhashobhashekam. Unless one bathes in the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee is free from all contamination. This is the power of that dust from the feet of pure devotees. And also Kaviraj Goswami, we hear, what are the 3 most powerful substances in Chaitanya Charitamrita? Bhakta Pada Duli Ara Bhakta Pada Jal, Bhakta Bhukta Avishesh, Tina Mahada. He says, Bhakta Bhukta Avishesh. What is the most powerful substance? The remnants of that of the Vaishnavas. And then what is the next? Bhakta Parajala, the water that's cleansed the feet of the Vaishnava. And then Bhakta Paraduli, the dust of the Vaishnava. The dust of the Vaishnava is so incredible that even Krishna as Sakshi Gopal, Kaviraj Goswami glorifies Sakshi Gopal, incarnation of the Lord. I bow down at the feet of Sakshi Gopal, who came to just follow his servant to get the dust of his feet. Such an incredible, amazing concept. And what this transformation of Uddhava is actually very inspiring, because what happened was that because when he entered the association of more advanced devotees, this is what happens. Haven't you noticed? When you enter the association of exalted personalities, you become humbled, isn't it? And you can do one of two things. Like I've been coming to Mayapur, in the Holy Dham, for over 20 years, and it's a humbling experience. I'm thinking like I'm in New Zealand, because in New Zealand there's only 4 million people, and you can become the biggest book distributor and sell like maybe 10,000 New Zealand dollars worth of books. But in India, they're selling millions of books. And there's so many big preachers and exalted person, Prabhupada disciples and sannyasis. How can you not be humbled? When I came here to India with my Guru Maharaj, we first went to the eco-village with Radhanath Swami. Devamita Maharaj and Radhanath Swami, they were having their intimate, dealings. One brahmacharya was serving Radhanath Maharaj, and he was explaining to me and Devamita Maharaj, while he's cooking prasadam for Radhanath Swami's breakfast, he's preaching to 50,000 people on his cell phone in South India. So he's cooking breakfast for his Holiness Radhanath Maharaj, and his cell phone, he's preaching to like 50,000 people in South India. Like, he's a young brahmachari, probably 25 years old, How can you even, you can't compare. So what are you going to do? Are you going to, And it's true, it's a humbling experience. And from what I've seen, devotees do one of two things. They either can really take shelter of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You can take shelter of the holy name. You can take shelter in reading Chaitanya Charitam. You can take shelter of the Dham and serve the Dham. This is the actual, serve the Dham. And get the mercy from all the devotees and serve all the Vaishnavas in whatever little capacity we have. And get that mercy and bring it back to wherever we go and give that mercy. That's all you can really do. You got to be happy of that tiny, I'm speaking for myself, that insignificant position. So this is such a wonderful transformation. It's just like when you come into this environment, it's like, you've got to be humbled. And you can do one of two things. You can either do that, take shelter of the holy name, or what others do, you could go to Govinda's, get a big pizza, go to the Mahaprasad stall, or you could do both. Less expensive to chant Hare Krishna. So we embrace the purification that comes from devotional service. And it's a very wonderful thing when you actually embrace, yes, I'm insignificant, I'm tiny. And that's what Advaita Acharya realized. Advaita Acharya, one day he just spontaneously went, Haribo! I'm a servant of Lord Chaitanya, I'm a servant of Lord Chaitanya, I'm a servant of his servants. He's happy to just be a servant. It's such a beautiful philosophy. That's actually humility, because when someone has understood the value of humility, they're actually blissful. There's no longer that burden in their shoulders. I've got to be the biggest whatever gun. Everyone has to worship me. So that Advaita Acharya was like, I'm a servant of Lord Chaitanya. I'm a servant of Lord Chaitanya. To be humble means to be blissful. You're happy to be insignificant. Now, in the material world, who's happy to be insignificant? You talk to anyone in the West, we preach in the West, everyone is trying to think like there's some big corporate, like they're so important. But real humility means I'm happy to be small. And why is that? Is because in that insignificant position, I can actually cry out and call for the holy name. I can have a relationship with the holy name. And in that, I'm so satisfied in that relationship that I don't need anything else. Let me always just be in this humble position. Gopi bhatu padakamalayo dasa dasa anudasa. Lord Chaitanya, let me just be a servant of the servant of the servant of the lotus feet of the eternally self-manifesting ocean of nectar, the highest bliss, the master of the gopis. This was the desire of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This was his most eloquent way of saying, I'm not the body, I'm not a brahmana, I'm not a kshatriya, vaishya, shudra, brahmachari, grasta, vanaprastha, or a sannyasi. Just a servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna's servants. If someone is actually enlightened in Krishna consciousness, they're happy in that situation. Therefore, love and humility are like two sides of the same coin. When the increase of devotion arises, the increase of humility arises. Therefore, Uddhava is saying, Vrindavane kim api gulmalata oshadinam. Let me be a bush? No. Let me be a creeper? No. Let me just be a blade of grass. So I can get the dust particles of the Vaishnava, the pure devotees of the Lord. So this has been my little realization, my experience since I've been now in India for about a month, now with my spiritual master, and it's just such a humbling thing, especially being in the association of so many amazing devotees and sannyasis. I'm like, what? Who am I? When I was asked to give this class, I'm thinking, well, there's so many more qualified people here, but only by the sanction of Guru and the mercy of the devotees, I can say something that might be of value. So thank you very much for your association. I'm very, very grateful, very, very honored, and very humbled in all your presence. I was also recalling one funny story. Maybe Anuttama Prabhu, I can remember. I was very younger. One year I had won the marathon in New Zealand. The first time I won the book marathon in New Zealand. This is like maybe 2007. I had been practicing Krishna consciousness for about 6 years. Maybe I was 25 years old, like this, just a boy. And I wasn't expecting any big, big medal or anything like that. There was no one in New Zealand. There's hardly anyone there anyway. So you couldn't expect any big reciprocation. But my spiritual master had asked the manager of the ashram at that time, the BBT is organizing this meeting with the GBC of how we can increase book distribution all over the world. Can anyone, Prabhu, do you remember what year that was? I'm not too sure if you were there. Naveen and Narada Prabhu, he would know. But all the top distributors of all over the world were invited to that meeting. And they gave me full expense paid to Mayapur and back. And then Naveen and Narada Prabhu invited us to his house, and we were all discussing how we can increase book distribution in the world. I'm like, what? Just a 25-year-old boy. Everyone's been, he's like practicing Krishna consciousness for 25 years, 30 years, and they've been doing book distribution for the same amount of time. What can I say? It was the scariest thing I ever had to experience in my whole life. I remember Vijay Prabhu put us all in one line in front of the GBC. It's like, oh my God. It's a 5, 6-year-old devotee, And then and every one of them took their turn to give this presentation. This is how we increase book distribution. Like, I'm just counting down, like 15 of us. 1, 2, 3. What am I going to say? What am I going to say? And then it came to my turn. And then I stood up. I remember I stood up in front of the GBC, and I remember Japataka Maharaj sitting in the front. And it was Bhanu Swami was scratching his head, like, what's this guy going to say, And then I started my 5-minute spiel. I just, like Draupadi, just put my hands up. Anyway, say something. And then I sat back down, and I go, that was the most embarrassing, most humiliating experience I've ever had to go through. And to top it off, my spiritual master, as well as Devendra Swami, he interjected after I spoke. He said, actually, what Hriman Krishna is trying to say is, then he filled in the blank, which just completely destroyed the false ego, you know. It's like, oh my God, I just felt like sinking into the bottom of the floor. And I remember crawling to the Panchatattva that year, just, oh, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And I was trying to see it in the right light. Thank you so much for this purification. Thank you so much for this humiliation, you know. But at the same time, simultaneously, I remember also these very senior devotees, they were very loving, very affectionate, and they were giving me these beautiful smiling glances when I was seeing them around the campus. So anyway, whatever it takes to please the great souls, whether if it's just even to humiliate ourselves in front of them. I was just feeling like a bumbling child in front of our grandfathers, you know. But you know, sometimes bumbling children, they can increase the joy of their grandparents, saying something dumb and foolish. So I felt like that. Oh, you know, so look at that. But anyway, whatever it takes to please the great souls. Whatever it takes, we have to get the mercy of our superiors, of these amazing devotees. And this is the amazing realization Uddhava got when he went through Vrindavan. You know, this transformation is just remarkable. From being a little bit puffed up, but just wanting to be just a blade of grass. So this pride, it's such a detrimental thing. Someone was speaking about it a few days ago. And the beginning of it really is just the wanting to gratify our senses. I see this so many times in the Western world, you know. If you think about it, it's like, you know, whatever sense object you want for sense gratification, it's like, subconsciously one's actually thinking, I'm going to enjoy more than Krishna with this, whatever it is. It's a really subtle contamination. Whatever sense gratification we're attached to, I'm going to enjoy more than, as much or as more than Krishna, you know. And people put themselves up on the pedestal and have some kind of false security or stability that by this sense object, you know, I'm going to have some kind of security and, you know, things will be good. And we want others to acknowledge that. Those who acknowledge us, what we see as friends, and those who don't acknowledge us, we see as our enemies. And this is why we divide friends and enemies on the basis of sense gratification. But actually, that's just the beginning of pride. The beginning of pride just means I want to gratify my senses because I'm thinking, oh, I'm gonna enjoy more than Krishna. It's a very subtle contamination. So therefore, one embraces, as Uddhava embraced this, well, purification, purification of the heart. So Krishna will want to reciprocate with us more in more intimate ways. And so I think I'll end here because it's just almost 9 o'clock before I ramble into another big tangent. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for this opportunity. I'm very grateful and honored to speak a few words, and perhaps some of the senior Vaishnavas have anything perhaps they want me to say to clarify anything I said.
Hare Krishna. I like the humble attitude. I always remind myself that I don't need to be threatened by devotees who are better at Krishna consciousness than I am, especially since there are so many. I only need to be threatened by people who are better at gunfighting, and even then only when they have one at my head. And one of the times that happened, when the two thieves were arguing about whether or not to shoot me, I tell you what, this was a very great opportunity to chant a very attentive round, since it was probably going to be my last one. And I don't pray for those, but even those things are good, and I'm not threatened by people who are better at Krishna consciousness. Gunfighting, maybe.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Hi Krishna, thank you for the beautiful class. So I just want to ask that sometimes we see that our insignificant position makes us feel like we have this stigma. It feels like a stigma, and then we want to prove that we can be better, and this kind of takes away our humility. So how can we not see our insignificant position as a stigma and embrace humility?
It's certainly not an artificial humility. I mean, anyone can pretend to be humble, but it's very hard to pretend to be tolerant. And that Prabhupada explains in the Krishna book that actually one's greatness is one's ability to tolerate provocative situation. So when we're tested in that circumstance, that's when we're, our tolerance, and humility is also tested. How are we actually going to take shelter of the proper thing, which is Krishna in the holy name? So we can't fake it. We can't be like Advaita Acharya artificially. We have to go through the purification. It means accepting everything Krishna sends to us as something that's very personal, very individual, and very unique, that's meant for our upliftment of consciousness. And we have to be readily available to embrace that as something that's very beautiful, that's coming from Krishna. And we have to accept that. And that will help us grow as devotees, instead of just, brushing it up aside. But it begins with really just taking shelter of the holy name, chanting Hare Krishna attentively. It cannot be overly emphasized. It begins with that. So hopefully that helps. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for such a wonderful class. Prabhu, my question is that since you're a book distributor, being book distributor 20 years, my question is that in your life, did you face any kind of challenges while doing book distribution, and you came out victorious and you felt like, wow, yeah, the book distribution is really working for me? Can you share some of your...
My main challenge is challenge for most devotional servers is the mind. The mind gives us so many impediments, like a mad elephant, and that's the main challenge, is to overcome all the grief the mind brings us. Oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, they'll never say yes. They'll never accept me. It's like the more we associate with this thing called the mind, the more we become miserable. We get whipped by the greed, anger, madness, illusion, envy, all the 6 whips of the mind, anger, all these things. So this is the main challenge. The challenge really so much isn't out there, but it's more like in here, It's this internal challenge. And the best way that I've seen to overcome this is to have the association of devotees and chanting Hare Krishna and being in an association of more fixed up and advanced devotees. That really helps us overcome all the challenges that we have in Krishna consciousness and devotional service. Actually, I forgot to mention, Kaviraj Goswami is explaining, that what is the Mula Janma. Krishna Bhakti Janma Mula Sadhu Sangha. He says that the Janma Mula, the root cause of Krishna Bhakti, is Sadhu Sangha. And he translates Sadhu Sangha not just as any old devotee association. He says association with more advanced devotees. And even if one has awakened their Krishna Prema Janma Tena Punya Mukyanga. Mukyanga, still at its most essential. Even if one has developed their dormant love for Krishna, the association of devotees is still most essential. So the best way to overcome whatever internal challenges that we have is really the association of Vaishnavas, to have that solidarity and encouragement. That's what I've seen in my attempt to distribute books and preach over the years, is just the association of those devotees, like-minded devotees, who are actually giving us support and encouragement. And a lot of the times, 99% of the time, they're senior devotees. What I've seen, they can give us the best support, So that's my little experience. Otherwise, so many detailed examples of it. Hare Krishna. So I think, should we stop here? I'm happy to answer more questions after, because it's 9 o'clock. Hare Krishna. So thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi.